And one of the things that strikes me as problematic, let's say, with projects like the 1619 Project or the leftist insistence in the United States that America per se was founded on, let's say, slavery and oppression. The reason it really bothers me is because I think it's an anti-truth. I don't think it's just a lie, because a lie is sort of like a deviation from the truth, but an anti-truth is something that's exactly the opposite of what's true. And this is how I look at it. So the first question might be, well, is slavery a universal human proclivity or not? And the answer to that, as far as I can tell, and I've done some research into the topic, is yes, it's the default mode of operation for human cultures has been slavery. And that might be a consequence of our proclivity to engage in war, because my suspicions are that the institution of slavery arose as a consequence of capturing enemy combatants, deciding not to kill them, which would be the simple thing to do, and then utilizing them, and also feeling justified in doing that because, well, after all, they were trying to kill you, or there was a reason you were at war. And so we could say, well, slavery is the default condition for social organization. So then what emerges out of that is a kind of miracle. And the miracle to me is that any society ever decided that that was a bad idea. And as far as I can tell, the society that decided that most particularly and explicitly was Great Britain. And that was particularly Wilberforce. And he was an evangelical Christian. And the reason that he opposed slavery, 100% the reason that he opposed slavery, was because he was steeped in the biblical tradition. And then the Brits fought slavery on the high seas for 175 years and basically eradicated it as at least a morally acceptable enterprise. And the American tradition comes out of that tradition. And even if the US, like other cultures, is contaminated by the desire for power, it's the anti-slavery ethos that's actually central to the entire project. And so when the radical types are making the claim that Western culture is essentially slaveholding in its essence, as far as I can tell, they are opposing the only strain of culture, which also wasn't Western, by the way, because it's not like the Bible is a Western book exactly. It's not European. It's an import. And so they're opposing the only strain of thought that's ever existed that made both a powerful implicit and explicit anti-slavery case. And so that seems to be entirely counterproductive if they actually care about slavery. And then one more twist on that, historically speaking, well, I don't think that it's debatable. The Enlightenment types, like Steven Pinker, would debate this, I think, but I think he's wrong. I think all the societies in the world that are free and productive and generous, and those would be the societies that people would flee to if they had their choice. All of those are offshoots of the biblical tradition, every single one of them. And I can't see that as chance. And I also think the same thing about literacy is that without the biblical tradition, it was the biblical tradition and the invention of the printing press that brought literacy to the world. And it needed both of those. The Chinese had the printing press, but they didn't have that evangelical fervor to elect to bring everyone up to the pinnacle of self-governance and self-realization. And the bloody Brits, they wanted to do that even to their colonies, and Wilberforce talked a lot about that too, is that it was the obligation of the Brits as the colonial administrators say, to inculcate in the people who they had colonized the spirit of independence and freedom that would enable them to be self-governing citizens. And I also think that the British Empire managed that to a great degree. There's plenty of terrible mess and catastrophe along the way. But the US and Canada are both, and Australia, New Zealand, these are great countries. And you can say the same about many of the other Commonwealth countries, including India. They're beneficiaries of that tradition. And it's English, but it's also more deeply biblical. So I think you can make an extremely strong historical case for this.